If you already have an autism or ADHD diagnosis, you may assume all your challenges can be attributed to that label, or at least you did, but now you're starting to have doubts. You're noticing patterns that don't quite fit this simple explanation you were given. You might have even brought it up to your doctor only to have your concerns dismissed. But what if your instincts are right? What if the issue isn't a lack of traits, but the way those traits are being interpreted? Autism and ADHD can overlap in ways that make the reasons behind our behaviors easy to miss. And unfortunately, not all practitioners have the expertise or patience to tell the difference. So today, we're going to explore how autism and ADHD can hide each other and how to recognize when both are actually present. But before we can get into that, we need to look at what makes autism and ADHD so different, because once you understand that, the overlap is much easier to recognize. With ADHD, the issue isn't motivation or discipline, it's dopamine. Dopamine is a neurochemical that helps your brain start tasks, stay focused, shift between steps, and follow through with things. Unfortunately, the ADHD brain has inconsistent access to dopamine, so the abilities that rely on it don't always show up when you need them. Autism works very differently. The autistic brain depends on clarity and predictability because it doesn't automatically fill in the gaps when things are vague. Most people can make quick assumptions about social cues, expectations, or what's going to happen next. Autistic people often have to consciously analyze those things. This analysis isn't overthinking, it's the brain trying to make sense of information that isn't immediately clear. So when things are unpredictable, your brain shifts into decoding patterns, rules, and intentions so you can understand what is happening. That extra processing increases your cognitive load and becomes exhausting when it happens all day, every day. Predictability lowers that load, and that's what keeps you regulated. Now, when autism and ADHD occur together, the traits shift how each one shows up. It doesn't look like classic autism or classic ADHD. And that ambiguity is often why both conditions go undiagnosed for years. One way autistic traits get overshadowed is when impulsive ADHD traits lead social situations. With ADHD, if something catches your attention, the impulse to respond happens before your autistic side fully processes the situation. From the outside, it looks like social ease. You're talkative, animated, and engaged. On the inside, it's completely different. ADHD pulled you into the interaction before you were ready. And as a result, you don't fully understand the situation until after the fact, when you're replaying all the moments you missed, the exit cues, the shift in tone, the talking over others. But no one sees this rumination. And this is how the impulsivity of ADHD can overshadow autistic processing. Another place where the two conditions are confused is with task paralysis. When you're stuck on simple things, it's assumed you're either overthinking it or lazy, and that the solution in both cases is to just stop delaying the issue and deal with it. The behavior may be assumed to be a character flaw, and even if it is recognized as ADHD or autism, it's unlikely it will be attributed to both. ADHD task paralysis happens when a task doesn't activate your brain's dopamine-based motivation and initiation pathways. You know exactly how to do it, but your brain can't engage. It's like trying to start a car with no gas. The ability is there, but you can't connect the engine until something becomes urgent or interesting. And when it finally sparks, you finish the entire task in 3 minutes, which makes people assume you could have done it sooner. Autistic inertia is different. This is the need to understand the entire path before taking the first step. Your brain is trying to map the tone, the structure, and the sequence. It runs through every micro decision. If any of it feels unclear, your brain pauses because it can't start without seeing the full picture. It's like being asked to drive somewhere new without a map. When you're both autistic and ADHD, the paralysis comes from two directions at once. The task is unstimulating, so your ADHD pathways don't kick in. The steps are unclear, so your autistic reasoning can't map the path. Meanwhile, from the outside, it looks like procrastination, and the most confusing part is that you yourself may not know which part of your brain is blocking you. You just know you can't move. Next, let's look into special interests. Clinicians often look for that one obsession you've had since childhood. When they don't see a single topic spanning decades, they may rule out autism, but that's not how special interests work when ADHD is also present. You still get that autistic pull towards complete understanding. You need to know how something works, why it works, and how every piece connects. You see patterns others miss. Perhaps your knowledge is so deep that friends joke you could teach a masterclass. The depth is completely autistic as your brain craves total comprehension. But then there's ADHD. The novelty that made this interest exciting quickly fades and suddenly you no longer wish to engage. So you have a graveyard of interests. Each one was intense and consuming. You learned everything you could, but then your brain moved on, leaving you to look inconsistent. Clinicians may think this behavior is not remarkable. They don't see that depth, the need for complete understanding, or the way you approach each interest. Even so, the autistic behavior was real, but because it didn't last for years, nobody recognized the autism underneath. And that's not the only place where things get misread. There's another layer no one talks about, which is the exhaustion of wanting opposite things at the same time. The contradiction between needing predictability and craving novelty creates one of the biggest internal conflicts in AuDHD. Your autistic brain needs to know what's coming next, not because you're rigid, but because predictability lowers your processing load. When you know the layout, the sequence, and the expectations, your nervous system can finally rest. Your brain doesn't have to work so hard to make sense of the world. Now, your ADHD brain needs the opposite. It needs novelty to create dopamine. It needs stimulation to stay engaged. You live in the middle of those two needs and are constantly pulled in both directions. For example, you get excited about trying a new restaurant. Then you start thinking, well, how does ordering work there? Will it get loud? What's the seating like? And then suddenly you don't want to try the new place anymore, so you go to your usual place again. Your ADHD brain is bored, but at least your autistic brain can relax. Or you push yourself to choose novelty because you're desperate to challenge yourself. You might even enjoy it, but afterwards, you're exhausted in ways no one sees. You looked fine, you acted fine, but your brain was working very hard the entire time. You make plans, you cancel, you buy supplies for hobbies, you never start. You want to try new things, but even small shifts in your routine, like going to a new grocery store, can use up your entire capacity for the day. Clinicians may see that you don't follow rigid routines. They may notice spontaneous behavior or moments of novelty seeking and assume it points only to ADHD. What they don't see is the autistic pull underneath, the part of you that needs predictability so that your brain can rest. Both needs are real and both are constant. Unfortunately, every decision becomes a negotiation about which part of your brain you are going to disappoint that day. The last place these conditions hide each other is in what most people call hyperfocus. But when you have both autism and ADHD, you're actually experiencing three completely different states that look the same from the outside. ADHD hyperfocus is a version people recognize. Something finally gives your brain the stimulation it needs and you lock in completely. Hours pass without you noticing. You might forget to eat or take a break because the usual internal cues go quiet. You stay with the task until the dopamine fades and then the focus ends just as abruptly as it began. Autistic absorbed attention is different. You're working with patterns you understand, information that fits, and systems you've already mapped. Your nervous system settles because nothing here is unpredictable. You know you've been doing this for hours. You know you should probably stop. But this is the one place where everything feels clear and your brain can finally rest. So you stay with it a little longer. Then there's autistic preservation. This one isn't enjoyable at all. You start reorganizing a drawer and suddenly you can't stop until every pen is sorted by type and color. You're tired. You're no longer interested. You want to be done, but your brain doesn't release the task because something still feels unfinished. From the outside, All three states look identical. Someone sees you focus and assumes it's ADHD hyperfocus. They don't realize that sometimes it's autism seeking regulation. Sometimes it's ADHD seeking stimulation, and sometimes it's your brain getting caught in a loop you can't break. It looks like the same behavior, but it's due to completely different reasons, and most clinicians never look past the surface. When you look at all this together, the social disconnects, the task paralysis, the shifting interests, the three forms of intense focus, the pattern becomes clear. These aren't random inconsistencies. They're the way autism and ADHD interact when they coexist. Each one reshapes how the other appears, which is why the full picture never aligns neatly with a single diagnosis. And once you start recognizing these themes, the contradictions, the mixed signals, the places where one trait masks another, the past stops feeling confusing. It becomes coherent. The experiences that never fit the explanations you were given finally make sense when you look at them through an AuDHD lens. Understanding this doesn't solve everything, but it does finally give you a framework that matches your reality. If this video gave you a clearer way to think about your own patterns or helped you put language to something you've lived with for years, you're welcome to join me on Patreon at audhdhub. There are free resources, community spaces, and optional paid tiers if you want to explore these topics more deeply. Thank you so much for being here today. I will see you next time.